I'm 53 years old. For most of my life, I've been the kind of woman who stayed in her lane, polite, predictable, and always putting others first. Love? That was something I believed in once, long ago. But over the years, it faded into something more practical, like companionship, routines, and silent understanding. I was okay with that. At least I thought I was. But one quiet afternoon, in the middle of helping my son's friend with his college essay, something shifted. Something I wasn't prepared for. I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. It started on a Tuesday. The kind of ordinary day where the dishwasher hums in the background, the smell of fresh coffee lingers in the kitchen, and the soft tick of the hallway clock feels louder than it should. Jason, my son, had just started his first year at community college, and his friend Noah had been coming around more often. Noah had always been polite, tall, soft-spoken, the kind of young man who never forgot to say thank you. He and Jason had grown close in high school, and I suppose I'd always thought of him as just another one of the neighborhood kids I'd seen grow up. That day, Jason had gone off to work a shift at the grocery store, and Noah stayed behind to get some help with his college admissions essay. He was applying for a scholarship, something creative writing related, and asked if I'd take a look at what he'd written so far. I'd worked in publishing once, years ago before I became a full-time mom and then an empty nester with too much time and too many memories. Helping him felt natural. Like stretching an old muscle I hadn't used in ages. We sat at the dining table, laptops open, the autumn sun streaming in through the window. I remember the way the light caught in his hair, this soft chestnut brown that reminded me of how Jason's used to look before he shaved it down. Noah leaned in, reading over his paragraph while I made small suggestions, pausing to think through a particularly clunky sentence. "You're good at this," he said, suddenly looking up at me. I smiled. "Well, I used to do this for a living. It's just been a while. You should still be doing it. Seriously, you make this stuff make sense." His words landed gently but stirred something in me. Recognition, maybe. Or longing. A feeling that someone actually saw me, not just as Jason's mom, not just as a woman in her 50s, but as someone with value, with insight. I brushed it off with a quiet laugh, adjusting my glasses and glancing back at the screen. "All right, let's fix this part about your grandmother. You're close with her?" He nodded, his voice softer. "She raised me. After my mom, well, she had some problems. My grandma's the one who believed in me, said I had a voice worth hearing." I turned toward him, letting my hand rest beside his on the table. "She sounds like a remarkable woman." "She is," he said, eyes locked on mine for just a beat longer than expected. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable, but it was different, charged, subtle, but there. I pulled back slightly, heart picking up pace. I wasn't naive. I knew that look. But I also knew I was overthinking, or I told myself I was. Later that evening, after he'd gone and Jason came home, I found myself replaying the conversation in my head. Not just the words, but the pauses. The warmth, the way Noah looked at me when he said I should still be doing this work. It wasn't flirtatious exactly. It was more reverent. I stood at the sink washing dishes, and suddenly I was 25 again. Not in appearance, but in sensation. I felt alive. Not for what I was doing, but for how someone made me feel, noticed. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the wind rattle the last of the leaves outside, wondering why a single conversation with my son's friend had unsettled me so much. I wasn't falling for anyone. I told myself that firmly. But I also didn't expect what happened the next time he came over. Not the words he would say. Not the moment that would leave me frozen in place, searching my heart for the right thing to do. The following week, Noel returned, just like he said he would. Jason had another shift at work, and I assumed Noel would pop in for a bit to tighten up his final draft, maybe ask a few questions, and leave. I had planned on making tea, going over his essay one last time, and offering a bit of encouragement. Nothing more. But when I opened the door and saw him standing there, wearing a navy blue sweater, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair still damp from a morning shower, I felt something stir again. And this time, I didn't have the luxury of pretending I didn't. He smiled. "Hey, Mrs. Whitmore." "Just call me Diane," I said, stepping aside to let him in. He laughed a little. Right, sorry, habit. I led him to the dining room where the laptop still sat open from earlier that morning. The same table. The same light filtering through the window. But the air, it felt heavier somehow. Like the moment had already decided it was going to be different. We got to work, going line by line through his essay. He had rewritten the section about his grandmother, and it was beautiful, raw, honest, layered with subtle emotion. I found myself pausing, not to correct, but to feel. "You have a gift, Noel," I said quietly. This is powerful." He looked up at me, his eyes serious. "I only wrote it this way because of you. You showed me how to say what I was really feeling." I smiled, trying to keep the conversation grounded. Well, that's what good writing is. Feeling on paper. He closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. "Can I ask you something personal?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Why did you stop writing?" I wasn't expecting that. It hit me in a strange place, like someone tapping a bruise I didn't know I had. I took a breath. Life, mostly. Raising Jason, taking care of the house. Things just shifted. I guess somewhere along the way, I forgot to make space for my own voice. He was quiet for a moment, then softly, "That's sad, because you have such a beautiful voice." I laughed nervously, glancing down at the notepad between us. "No." But he didn't stop. "You make me feel like I matter. Not just as a student or Jason's friend, but as a person. Don't know how to explain it." I met his eyes, and something about the way he looked at me, unguarded, sincere, made my stomach flutter in a way I hadn't felt in years. "You do matter," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. And then came the moment I didn't expect. He reached across the table and gently touched my hand. Not forcefully, just a touch. Warm, intentional. "I know this is complicated," he said, "and I don't want to cross any lines, but I need you to know that I see you. Not as someone's mom, not as a helper, but as someone real. Someone who makes me think and feel things I didn't think I could." I didn't pull my hand away. I didn't say anything for a long time. Because the truth is, I felt it too. That strange mix of recognition and danger. Like standing at the edge of a cliff with the wind pushing softly at your back. It wasn't about age or boundaries or what we were supposed to be. It was about feeling alive in a way I had forgotten was even possible. Still, I did what I thought was right. I gently slid my hand away and stood up, walking toward the kitchen under the guise of boiling more water for tea. Behind me, the silence was thick. "Noel," I finally said, not turning around, "you're going to do great things. You really are." I heard him stand, slowly gathering his things. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I just had to be honest. I turned to him, and I could see how much he meant it. How careful he'd been. How brave. "You didn't make me uncomfortable," I said. "You just reminded me of something I thought I'd lost." He nodded, almost sadly. "Will I see you again?" I wasn't sure how to answer. But I knew we had crossed a threshold neither of us could ignore. "Finish your essay," I said quietly. "Then we'll talk." And with that, he left, leaving the door open behind him, as if to say, "This isn't over." The next few days were a blur of thoughts I couldn't quite tame. Every time I sat down with a book, my eyes wandered to the corner of the page and drifted. Every time I tried to focus on chores or scroll through my phone, my mind circled back to Noel, his words, his eyes, the touch of his hand. It wasn't just the attention that unsettled me. It was the clarity. The way he saw me, not as a supporting character, but as someone with a story of her own. And for the first time in years, I wanted to be part of that story. Jason didn't notice anything different. He came and went, dropped his backpack at the door, told me about his shift, and then disappeared into his room. That gap, the one that grows naturally between mothers and grown sons, had become so wide, I sometimes wondered if I'd drifted too far into the background. Maybe that's why Noah's presence felt so loud. He noticed me when the rest of the world didn't. On Friday, I got a message. Asterisk, asterisk, hey Diane. I finished the essay. Would you mind reading the final version? Maybe in person, asterisk, asterisk. I stared at the screen for longer than I should have. Then typed back. Asterisk, asterisk, of course. I'll be home after 2 asterisk, asterisk. My hands trembled just slightly as I set the phone down. At 2:15, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there he was again. But something in his expression had changed. He looked calmer, more grounded. Maybe he'd expected me to tell him never to come back. Maybe he was surprised I hadn't. He held out his laptop, but there was no rush to open it. Instead, I invited him in, and we sat on the couch, something we hadn't done before. The dining table felt too exposed now, too deliberate. I began to read. The essay was incredible. It wasn't just well written, it was raw and vulnerable. He wrote about his grandmother and the loss of his mother's presence. He wrote about feeling invisible and about the person who helped him feel seen again. He didn't name me, but I could feel my fingerprints all over those words. When I finished, I looked at him. "It's beautiful, Noah. Truly." He nodded. "It's because of you." I shook my head. "No, it's because of you. You just needed someone to remind you of what was already inside." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes focused on the carpet. "I've been thinking a lot," he said slowly. "I know this situation is different, but I'm not confused about what I feel. I know it might sound crazy to you, but I've never connected with anyone like this before." His words should have startled me, should have made me recoil, but they didn't. Because somewhere deep down, I felt the same. "No," I said gently, "I need you to understand something. I'm not just older than you. I've lived a whole life you haven't even imagined yet. I've raised a son. I've buried dreams. I've woken up in the middle of the night wondering where the years went." "I know," he whispered, "and that's exactly why I'm drawn to you." That caught me off guard. He continued, "Most people my age are still figuring out who they are. But you already know, and you don't hide it. You don't try to be anything but honest. And that's beautiful to me." There was a long silence. Not awkward, just heavy with choice. I reached for his hand again. This time, it felt natural. No lines crossed, just fingers brushing fingers. "I don't know what this is," I said, "but I know it matters." He looked up at me, his voice low. "Then let's not ignore it." And in that moment, I didn't feel foolish. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt seen, heard, alive. We didn't kiss. We didn't even move closer. But something shifted, quietly, deeply. Whatever this was becoming, it wasn't about thrill. It was about truth. And it was just beginning. The following week was quiet, but not in the way silence usually feels. It was a thoughtful quiet full of reflection and the hum of something gently unfolding. Noah didn't come by, and I didn't message him. But we both knew the space between us was intentional, not avoidance, but respect. Like taking a deep breath before stepping forward. I found myself journaling again. I hadn't done that in years. Not since Jason was little, and I used to sneak 5 minutes at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a pen in hand, pretending I still had time to be a writer. But now, something had opened in me, and it wasn't just about Noel. It was about remembering the parts of myself I had shelved long ago. The woman who once wanted to write a novel. The woman who used to dance in the kitchen when no one was looking. The woman who had passions and desires, and who didn't always have to be everyone else's support system. That Saturday, I got a message from Noel. Asterisk, would it be okay if I stopped by? I'd like to say something in person, asterisk. I hesitated for a moment, but only out of habit. Then I typed back. Asterisk, yes. Around 5 asterisk. He arrived right on time. There was no laptop this time. No essay. Just him. We sat on the porch this time, the late afternoon sun painting long gold streaks across the wooden floorboards. The garden was quiet, and the breeze was just warm enough to be comforting. "I've been thinking," he said, hands folded in his lap, "about what this really is, what it means." I waited. I know I'm young, and I know people might judge, but this, what I feel when I'm around you, it's not a crush. It's not infatuation. It's deeper than that. I looked at him, heart steady. "I believe you. I also know," he added, "that you need space to decide what you want, not what's allowed or expected. Just what you want." That struck something in me. He wasn't asking for anything, not promising anything, just giving me the one thing I hadn't received in a long time: choice. "I've spent so much of my life doing the right thing," I said softly. "Living in the safe lanes, taking care of everyone else's needs before even considering my own." He nodded. "And what do you need now?" I thought about it. About the warmth I felt when he spoke to me like I mattered. About the way his eyes held no judgment, just sincerity. About the simple truth that I didn't feel old or invisible in his presence. "I need to stop shrinking," I said. "I need to feel like a woman again. Like I still get to write the next chapter of my story, even if it doesn't look the way others think it should." Noah reached over, not boldly, not dramatically, just enough to rest his hand on mine. "Then let's start there," he said. "No pressure, no definitions, just truth." We sat in silence for a while after that. And in that silence, I felt something settle. Not resolution, not certainty, but a kind of quiet courage. Because this story, my story, wasn't about a forbidden romance or some dramatic twist. It was about rediscovery, about connection, about learning that you're never too old to be surprised by your own heart. That night, after he left, I didn't cry. I didn't question. I simply walked into the living room, opened my old laptop, and began to write, not someone else's essay, not notes on grammar or structure, but my own words, my own truth. I don't know where things with Noah will lead. Maybe nowhere. Maybe somewhere I could never have imagined. But what I do know is this. He woke something in me I thought had died. And whatever happens next, I won't be afraid to feel it, to follow it, to live it.